Warriors of Chaos was an underwhelming faction. Call of the Beastmen was extremely expensive for a faction that took 5 years to make its price point, and the Grim and the Grave needed to wait until Game 3 for their lords to be separated from their original factions. Needless to say, it wasn't looking like the greatest trend of post-launch content, but only 1 month after the release of the Grim and the Grave, the second and final Lord pack for Total Warhammer 1 would be released. Would the King and the Warlord continue the trend of mediocrity, or would it finally begin to shift the tides and offer a fun experience for its price? Well, I guess there's only one way to find out.
The King and the Warlord.
The King and the Warlord would be another Lord pack, mainly adding roster additions to the already decent Greenskins and Dwarfs. Each got their respective new Lord, now with a differing starting position and a differing faction. The biggest difference this DLC offered was they also had different campaign mechanics. This was the first DLC to actually add unique campaign mechanics. By our current metrics, it is a bit lackluster, but it was a telltale sign of improvement for the Warhammer team at CA. The aforementioned campaign mechanic was the rush for Karak Eight Peaks, a lore-accurate portrayal that sees the hopeful reclamation of Karak Eight Peaks by either contestant. On the dwarf side, we have Belegar Ironhammer. After his ancestors lost Karak Eight Peaks, he was pushed away past the Badlands to now come back and reclaim it, and that's what makes up his campaign mechanic. You're paying an extra 50% for the upkeep for all your units until that happens. Luckily, the game offers you an early confederation with Karak Hearn to consolidate your starting position, but it can be a trap as you're surrounded by hyper-aggressive enemies. This campaign was actually made significantly harder because of the constant grudges feeding into high penalties while fighting a war on multiple fronts, just to keep your home province intact. Once you actually do reclaim Karak Eight Peaks, you don't get much. I assume for now it's a bug because you get no bonuses at all for completing the main goal of the campaign. With all that being said, after the race is over, that's where the uniqueness of Belegar's campaign ends. As a product released almost 6 years ago, it was a progenitor of good things to come, but it still felt lackluster. Once you reclaim Karak Eight Peaks, you work towards a global domination. Aiding you in these ventures are 3, arguably 4 new units, 3 missile infantry and an artillery piece. The artillery piece is a worthless piece of shit I've never used outside of footage for this review. The other unit we're given is 3 different variations of Rangers. Rangers with great weapons, and Bugman's Rangers. I'm personally a big fan of them as they move a lot faster than a normal dwarf and have the ability to reposition. I'm not the biggest fan of the great weapon variant, mainly due to its significant loss of range, but all of them are buffed exponentially by heroes and Belegar. Belegar himself isn't too interesting as most dwarf lords go, difficult to kill and weak to AP ranged. Overall, the dwarfs definitely got decent content, but their lack of long-term unique mechanics and still lack of variability for their playstyle are up in the air on how it impacts the overall recommendation. On the Greenskins side, we have Skarsnik, and he's a scheming bastard. His campaign is legitimately a great one, and in my opinion is only second to Grom the Paunch. Whether that's due to a lack of originality between the Greenskin lords, or Skarsnik's campaign truly being a great one is up to interpretation. Skarsnik's campaign isn't exactly all that unique comparatively to Belegar. You rush to Karak Eight Peaks to secure a victory condition, but he doesn't pay extra for his units. The ability to recruit orcs is completely locked out until securing Karak Eight Peaks. No savage orcs, no biggins, no black orcs. Not until Karak Eight Peaks is settled. That makes for an extremely fun campaign of goblin and monster exclusive armies, which is bolstered by the new fantastic units. Squig hoppers and squig herds being hyper fast AP cav, which are great at chewing through dwarfs. Nasty skulkers are a group of sneaky AP infantry that have the ability to lock enemies into engagements they don't want to be in. All rounded out by Skarsnik's ability to poison every weapon in his army. In the battle aspect, you'll be thinking like a goblin, for dozens of glass cannons to exploit an enemy, and that's what makes his campaign so fun. However, on the campaign map, he still plays the same as Belegar for all intents and purposes. Overall, I do give CA more credit for Skarsink's campaign, just because the idea of locking off an almost crucial point of the roster to enforce campaign progress is an interesting one, especially because it makes you play the campaign wildly different from the other Greenskin lords. Now, I would give this DLC a high recommendation, especially for its price to content ratio and also how well the content was done. Because of all of that, I can definitely give this campaign a recommendation, especially if you're thinking about playing Greenskins. This was a fantastic DLC, and with Immortal Empires being patched, I can only see it getting better, which will probably mean re-reviews of the previous DLCs. I digress. The next DLC will be Realm of the Wood Elves. I'll see you then.